Hello guys, Storn here, and today I'm bringing you a guide to all of the sites for weapon customization for the Mp5k. I will be going over things like their visual recoil and how easy they are to use in combat. So, let's start with the iron sights. Personally, I found the iron sights to be very obstructive. There's a lot of clutter on screen, and it's pretty hard to see around them. Combine that with the visual recoil of the gun, and you pretty much can't aim with them. It's very hard to see where you're supposed to be aiming, and the iron sights go above the actual spot. I recommend getting off of these as soon as possible. Next is the Cobra. This sight seemed to actually be usable, though I'm not a big fan of it. The nice T it makes is pretty cool, and the idea that the center where you're aiming is open is nice, but you can't really use it since the T itself is very small, and there's this glow around which kind of blocks that center. It just makes it a giant crosshair with a lot of clutter. Also, it seems to recoil a little bit more than the other sights. I'm not sure if this is just me seeing things weird or if it actually does that for some reason. The nice thing, with this sight is the fact that you can actually aim under and see where you're aiming. It seems to be just about at the end of the line in the T, so it's pretty easy to find. The next sight is the Mp5k. This is the first sight in the tree that I really like. It has this nice solid dot that you can use to track your enemies, and it's very easy to follow with the visual recoil. Also, it doesn't seem like the visual recoil is that much, and it's really easy to track your enemies, aim at them, and shoot them down. The other nice bonus is the 3 accuracy you gain from using the sight. The next sight is our first acog, the XPS2. This is a pretty nice sight. The recoil isn't bad on it, and it's very easy to aim with. The only problem I really found with it was the fact that the red lines here are kind of fuzzy and very hard to track your enemies with. Other than that, this is a really solid sight. The recoil can be a bit much to deal with, but it's no exception to not use it. Next up is the Aimpoint Micro H1. This is the next really nice sight, and the best one so far. You have this nice dot in the center, which is really easy to use for tracking your enemies, and has very easy to use visual recoil. The only problem I have is that the dot is a bit big, and I really don't like the red. Other than that, it's really nice sight, and you should probably use it if you have it unlocked. Next up is another EOTech sight, the EXPS2-2. This is probably my favorite EOTech of the group, and that is because it has this nice green solid line, very easy to use. It's not fuzzy around the edges, though it is slightly smaller than the other EOTechs. The recoil is just as easy to use, if not easier. The only downside is that you don't get the same accuracy bonuses, but if you have good silencers and laser sights, you can easily neglect that. To finish off our EOTechs, we have the 553. This is essentially the same as the XPS2, except the bonuses are a little bit different, and there's a dotted line going down the center instead of one solid dot. Other than that, it's pretty much the same sight, just as easy to use. Either like it more or you like it less. Not much difference. Next up, we have the iron dot sight. I'm not really sure how I feel about this one. It can be a very nice sight since it has a very small dot, though the sight itself is pretty small. When you're shooting it, the recoil makes the dot itself bounce up a lot, and sometimes I felt like it was going outside of the sight and you couldn't see it anymore. Other than that, this is a really good sight, especially if you want to go sniping with it. The next sight is probably my favorite in the entire tree. It's the Comp M4. This is essentially the Micro H1 sight, but upgraded. The red dot in the center has been improved, and personally I kind of like the outside of the sight a little bit better, aesthetics and whatnot. But the recoil, again, very easy to use, not much recoil, the dot's easy to track, very good sight. Next up, we have the Delta Point. Not really a big fan of this sight, especially because I don't really like triangles that well in the first place. Though this one does have a small one, it's fairly easy to use, the sight itself is pretty nice, Recoil is not that hard to manage, and the sight's very open. If you like triangle sights, this is probably the one you should go for. Next up is the Tragicon RMR. This is a worse delta. It's very hard to use, the sight is small, the triangle got a lot bigger, and with the recoil it's almost impossible. If you can aim this thing, you're probably lucky. Triangle sights themselves usually aren't liked by many, so if you're going to use one, go with the delta. For our last kilometer, we have the WalterMRS. This is very similar to the Mp5k 21, but it's pretty much a better sight. The circle itself is a little bit bigger, which makes it easier to track, and also I personally think the sight itself looks nicer. All in all, very nice sight, one of the best. The last sight we have is the acog. What's so special about this sight is the fact that it has a 4x zoom as opposed to all the other sights which only have a 1x. The only problem I have with this is the fact that when you get lots of shaking and explosions, it's pretty much impossible to aim this sight since the entire scope goes off screen. Other than that, if you want to take in some really long range action, this is probably the sight you should go for, unlike me using it in CQC. All in all, I think the Mp5k has a really nice wide selection of different sights. While it could have some more scopes to it, I don't think it really needs it, as the acog is one of the best scopes, and it's already an SMG. We don't need long range sniping SMGs.